The book presents a comprehensive university-level course in macroeconomics from an MMT perspective. Rather than adopt an approach where we present the teaching sequence based upon standard mainstream macro and then qualify that conceptual structure with some real-world criticisms, we have taken an uncompromising MMT approach, putting the currency issue in government at the forefront. We want students to really understand how a modern monetary system operates, to appreciate how the non-government and government sectors interact in a world where the currency issuing government has no financial constraints, how the central bank and the commercial banks interact, how the labour market works, why are societies burdened with mass unemployment, underemployment and precarious work. We cover how trade and capital flows impact on economic outcomes and a whole lot more. Each of these areas is usually misrepresented in mainstream macroeconomic texts and media articles. Our new book will redress those misunderstandings by providing a clear and connected set of principles which students can use to gain a rich understanding of the workings of the economy. In particular, we want students to fully understand what the capacities of a currency issuing government are and how fiscal and monetary policy can be used to enhance the well-being of the nation. We've grounded that approach in real-world institutions rather than adopt the mainstream approach, which assumes a world and behaviours that are not remotely observed in the real world. Our view is that students in mainstream macro courses are introduced to concepts and explanations of how the monetary system operates, which are simply incorrect when applied to the real world. The consequences of these flaws have, at times, been devastating. Just think about the global financial crisis. Mainstream economists did not see it coming. And when the world was on the precipice of a total financial collapse, many advocated government cuts to return to fiscal surpluses. The austerity bias resulted in millions of people being unnecessarily unemployed and poverty rates rose. Mainstream economists have made many predictions in the past, most of which have never bore fruit. They predict that quantitative easing by central banks would lead to accelerating inflation. They predicted that the rising fiscal deficits would push up interest rates and lead to governments running out of money, and many more. None of these predictions bore fruit. Yet the governments that listened to their advice forced millions of workers to lose their jobs and ensured that economic recovery would be a long, drawn-out and painful process. Our real-world approach is grounded in what the government can actually do. Most of the so-called financial constraints on government, expressed in statements like, well, how are you going to pay for it, are in fact just political constraints. A currency issuing government can purchase whatever is for sale in that currency, including all idle labour. Our new textbook provides a rich framework for analysing when government should increase or decrease its spending and or adjust taxes. While we aim to present a contemporary narrative, we are also mindful of the past. To provide students with a contextual perspective, we introduce them to a rich historical analysis, both in terms of the history of economic thought itself and the economic history of nations. We also show students how the way we frame economic narratives and the language we use in presenting economic ideas has important implications for the politics of economic policy. Additionally, all the important practical tools are presented. Students will acquire a solid understanding of national accounting and the ways in which those accounting structures can be reconstructed to provide rich insights into policy options. We have also not shied away from recognising the benefits of formality, that is, the use of mathematics and statistical techniques. The text will provide a solid grounding in the more technical aspects of the subject. Students will gain knowledge of mathematical techniques, not for their own sake, but because they help us gain a more effective understanding of the material covered. Students will learn how to deal with real-world data and apply that knowledge to real-world situations. We see that as being an essential preparation for students once they enter the professional stages of their lives, and are required to prepare meaningful commentary on real-world developments. So what's inside the book? Well, the textbook has 8 parts. Part A is about establishing basic concepts and measurement issues. Here we learn about how a macroeconomist thinks and does his or her job. We introduce the historical context to ensure we understand where nations have been. We discuss the National Accounts Framework, which is used to measure things like GDP growth and productivity. Importantly, we learn about framing and language in public discourse, which will help students see through spurious arguments like the government will run out of money. Part B introduces the concept of monetary sovereignty, and we explore the way the government and non-government sectors interact in a monetary economy. In Part C, we focus on theories of income, output and employment determination, and we reprise the key debates in macroeconomics. In Part D, we relate those ideas to the topics of unemployment and inflation. We learn how government can create full employment and what the advantages of that strategy are against the current system, which uses mass unemployment to suppress inflationary tendencies. In Part F, we provide a more detailed account of the external sector. We learn about trade and capital flows. We compare and contrast fixed and flexible exchange rate systems. And we consider the concept of fiscal sustainability within an open market economy context. We consider the question, who rules, global financial markets or sovereign governments? Part F focuses on economic crises and the role that investment plays in driving economic fluctuations. Part G considers the mainstream alternative to MMT, such as the new monetary consensus. We show how the mainstream approaches are deeply flawed and should be abandoned. And finally, Part H examines the contemporary debates in policy, such as the ageing society issue, pension sustainability and financial market reform. We certainly hope you enjoy the learning experience using our textbook. It is the first macro textbook to use the MMT lens, and we think it represents a massive improvement on the learning materials currently available to students. We're very excited about its publication. All the best with your studies.